my car over from points distributor to electronic ignition distributor. It's just something that I'm wanting to do, kind of modernize it a little bit. My car still has the original points distributor in it. And you know, they do wear after some years. The lobes get worn down a little bit. But I've got this new Excel HEI distributor. So I'm going to be converting my car over to it. It's not something that's irreversible either. You can always convert back to points if you wanted to. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is remove the air cleaner. And I'm going to take the distributor cap off and get it set on the number 1 cylinder on top dead center. That's just a good starting point. So I'll show you how to do that. So like I said, I'm going to take the air cleaner off. It's just in the way. Now I'm going to take the distributor cap off. It's just got these 2 screws that you push down and turn. This is to get us located for the new one, so the new one's going to go back in pretty much the same position. Probably not very easy to see there, but you can see right now it's pointing back this way. What we're looking at is the rotor button. You can see it's pointing back toward about the driver position right now. And I'm going to turn it and I'm going to make sure it gets on the number 1 position, which is going to be about right here, pointing toward the number 1 cylinder of the engine. And also the timing mark should be lined up at 0. I'm just going to bump the ignition to do that. And what that does, that gets us pretty close. You can see that I'm pretty close to being pointing toward the number 1 cylinder. So I'm going to see if I can just turn the engine just a little bit more by hand. Alright, now I was able to do that on some engines. May not be as easy to do on that, but you can see which direction the distributor is pointing now. Pointing back toward the number 1 cylinder. You can also see the timing mark on the engine is pointing at the 0. Or very close to it. So now we're in a good position to remove the distributor. Alright, so now I'm going to disconnect and remove the original coil. It takes an 11/32 wrench or nut driver to do this. I've just got to loosen them up and pull the wires out like that. One of the wires, the one that goes on the negative side, goes back to the distributor. And it's going to come out with the distributor. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove this mount for the coil. And this just takes a 1/2 inch socket to remove that. And I'm just removing this to make clearance for the new distributor, and I don't need it on here anymore. I'm going to put the bolts back in the hole just in case I ever need them again. Alright, so it takes a 9/16 wrench to remove the distributor. You got the little hold down clamp on the passenger side. And they make a special wrench for working on these, but I don't find it to be too hard to just take off with a normal wrench on this car. I'm sure on some cars it's probably more complicated. So what's important is when we put the new distributor in, we want it to drop in. We want this rotor button to be pointing at the exact same place. So if I look at this, it's pointing directly to the corner of the carburetor, or to the driver's side of the carburetor on the round part. So I want to make sure I get the new one dropped in there in the same place. Otherwise I'll never get my timing set right. If you're one tooth off, it's very hard to have enough room to, for the distributor be pointing in a strange direction that doesn't work as good as what it's supposed to. So once you get this clamp lifted up just a little bit, you can actually slide it back out of the way and pull the distributor out. And that's how easy it is to pull the distributor out. So that's the difference in the new distributor and the old. You can see the upper part of it is a lot larger. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. You can see the gears are still the same. They give you some lubricant to put on the gears for break-in, and we're going to do that. They give you a pouch of lubricant in this package from Excel. And you can see what it is right here, Excel gear break-in. So you just open this up. It says apply a liberal coating on the distributor gear. So probably gonna have to get a pair of scissors. So you can see the break-in lubricant. I'm just gonna put all over the gear here. And it'll get oil on it soon enough. You can see how oily the original one is. But this is just for breaking in the gear. I guess initially there may be little edges that wear off from the machining process that needs a little bit more lubricant for the break-in period. Alright, so now we're going to take this distributor cap off so we can see. We got this wire here that hooks up to the cap. We can take it loose. And on this one there's going to be 4 screws instead of just the 2 like on the original. Okay, so I took the distributor cap off the new distributor, and we're going to drop it down in there, and we're going to get it pointed at the top dead center on number 1, which is exactly where we were talking about before. Alright, so I'm going to take the other distributor cap off and get it out of the way. I was going to try to keep it in place to swap the wires, but we can figure the wires out. Alright, so now we got a lot more room. We got the wires out of the way. We got the wires and the distributor cap out of the way, I should say. So now, as you can see, we've got a lot more room when we're putting this back in place. Alright, so this thing has to turn, when it goes down it has to fall into the oil pump. The oil pump drive also. So what we have to do sometimes is move the oil pump drive with a screwdriver. What you'll notice is that it does not fall all the way down into place and you still got some play room here. What that's telling me is that oil pump drive is not lined up. Alright, so it fell into place there, which I believe is not in the correct position. It's pointing a little more toward the number 2 or the number 3 cylinder. So I think what I need to do is remove the distributor back out again and turn my oil pump drive shaft just a little bit with the screwdriver to get myself into the correct position. Otherwise I won't have enough room to turn my distributor to set the timing. So it takes a long screwdriver to put down in there. It's kind of difficult to see when you're doing it in the blind. Alright, but you can feel it if you've ever seen one before. You can feel it. So I turned it a little bit, so let's see if that gets us where we need to be. If you've never seen it before, you probably need to just climb up there. Alright, so obviously I turned it way too much. You can see how far this thing turned when I did that. And it's sitting all the way flat, so I gotta turn it back. And this is kind of the biggest pain in the butt part of it. Alright, that made it down in there perfect. You can see now I'm pointed right back where I was at the edge of the carburetor circle. So I was able to get it in the correct place. So now what I'm going to do is snug down the hold down clamp with my 9/16 wrench. To where I can still move my distributor, but it's kind of holding in place a little tighter because right now it's so loose that if I were to move it, I would move it a lot. We don't want to move it a lot. Alright, so I put my cap back on. I'm going to plug up this wire that goes in the back. Like that. Now I've got to do the wiring for the other part, which is going to be a switched wire that goes to the battery. The original wire is a switched wire that goes to the battery, but it's not a large enough wire according to everything I've read. It needs to be at least a number 12 or some people say 14, some people say 12. So if I'm going to run one, I'm going to run the larger one. And we need to make sure we get that wire from the ignition, from a switched source of the battery, which basically goes to the key switch. When the key switch is on, it gives power. When it's off, it doesn't have power. And what that does is makes it to where when you turn the key off, it'll kill the engine. Otherwise, the engine would never stop running. So what I'm going to do is run my wire through the firewall, through this grommet. And I'm going to go around to the inside and hook it up before I hook up this side. Okay, so I've hooked up my power wire on the inside to the ignition switch source at my fuse box. So now on this side, I've got my wire sticking out, and it's going to be hooked to the one that says battery here. And also, during this same install, I'm hooking up a tachometer on the inside. My car doesn't have a tachometer, it has a vacuum gauge. So this green wire is going to hook to the terminal on the distributor that says tack. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. I wanted to explain the wiring a little better on the distributor. You got two wires going to the distributor, one going to the tachometer and one going to the fuse box from when the key switch is turned on. So you want to make sure that you use the wire going straight to that. You don't use any of the factory wires. The one that goes to the starter and the other one is a resistance wire that went to the key switch. If you use those wires at all, what will happen is the car won't turn off when you turn the key switch to the off position. So you need to run a new wire straight to the fuse box on that comes from the key switch. Another thing, I'm going to have to get me some new wires. I got these wires and I bought them for a 70s model Chevrolet engine. And they're not long enough for my engine. I'm going to have to get some of the ones that I cut myself. Some of the ones that you cut to the length you need. But other than that, everything worked really good with the install. Of course, you set the timing after you get the distributor in. But that's pretty much it. The install was not that difficult, and it worked really well. I haven't had any issues with it whatsoever.